Hello and welcome to this tax course with Visp and Her og Der. My name is Aslak Høsen and I am the Managing Director of Visp, which is an artist organization for anyone who works with visual arts in Norway. You can be an artist or a curator or art critic, and you can join up for free on visp.no. I want to welcome Murtaz Habash. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. Would you give a short introduction to Her og Der, please?
Yes, I'm trying to go on the camera, but it says like I can't start your video, but it's okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the tax course. As most of you know about Her og Der and what Her og Der work with, Her og Der is a networking and platform for the newly arrived artists in Norway. Through this platform, we're trying to provide access, contact, and everything the artist needs in order to function as an artist in Norway. So the tax is one of the biggest struggle for us as international artists, since our systems where we come from in our countries might be different than the Norwegian one. That's why we found the need to have this course in collaboration with Visp. I would like to thank you very much, Aslak, for this collaboration. And also I welcome again everyone here, and I wish you a good and a useful course. Thank you very much, Aslak.
Thank you. Okay, we have some issues with the video, but I will try to work that out soon. I just want to say that if you have any questions throughout this this course, you can either on your bottom right-hand side press the Q&A, question and answers if you want to ask a question to Christopher, or you can press the sign that says raise hand if you want to ask the question orally. I will now make Christopher the host so that he can turn on his camera. Let's see. This is very interesting. Are you there, Christopher?
I can hear you very well. There I am as well. Yeah, fantastic. On video as well. It's wonderful.
Welcome, Christopher. You want to say
Thank you
about some few words about yourself?
Yeah, I can do that. Just quickly, I've been working in this field for now about 22 years. I've been running my own business, Vastal and Ericsson, for many years, and I've been a former partner of PwC up until New Year's Eve last year. And now I'm just working on my own and enjoying art and living the life and giving lectures like this. So yeah, that's a quick introduction. Yeah.
Good. So we're going to talk about, well, of course, næringsoppgaven for billedkunstnere. Does it have an English word?
No, no, it doesn't, unfortunately. So it's not. I do apologize on behalf of the Norwegian state on the sort of the state of this næringsoppgave, because it's not very user friendly, and Altinn still has quite a long way to go. But I'll see during tonight that if I can guide you through it. That's the sort of main issue today. So we'll see what we can do. And please do ask questions along the way as we go along.
Oh, by the way, can I ask, is it true that there's going to be some changes to næringsoppgaven next year?
Yeah. So everyone is getting a new tax report, and some of them, if you're just a receiver of salaries, like an ordinary employee somewhere, then you've gotten your new tax form already for 2020. But for all the rest of us, it will be 2021. So this time next year, there should be a new one coming out, and that will be changes for the billedkunstneroppgave as well. And hopefully about the functionalities. So please hang in there, as this is the final year of this form that we see now. So it should be, it should be good. So if I can share my screen with you guys, let's see if I can do that.
Yeah, I can just say, if people haven't noticed, on the chat button on the bottom line there, the first text there's slides from today's workshop. You can find that on our website vis.no. That link on the top first line. You can download the PDF if you want to watch it like that as we go along. Sorry, keep going.
Definitely, there are some slides that have very small, but do print them or whatever you like and blow them up on the screen if you. I'll try to go through all of them. I realize that I have quite a dark voice tonight. It's not because I'm trying to look like Leonard Cohen or because I have gotten corona or anything, or have been heavily drinking. It's the fact that I was doing a slight barbecue on Saturday, and you know how you wait for the sun, and after 7 hours you still wait for the sun, and you realize your face is blue because you're so cold, but you still wait for the sun. So while waiting, I've gotten this very, very low voice. So
you sound like him, but you don't look like him.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank God. So anyway, hopefully that doesn't make you go asleep. You're not listening into the Radio Jazz channel tonight. It's all about taxes tonight. So this course is going to be how to leave 2020 once and for all. So let me walk you through it. Just to give you a quick update on the Norwegian tax system. It's not a very it's a slightly complex system, but do not be afraid. Taxes in Norway, it's not a great variety. It's a flat rate. It's 22%, and it's not a very high tax rate. The trouble is we have other types of taxes coming in, but the tax in Norway is 22%. So you need to think of that when you calculate, how much money should I set aside for paying my taxes, etc. 22% is the figure that you need to be thinking about, and that is for all your income. And in addition to that, you also pay taxes. It's called the bracket tax, the trinnskatt in Norway. So that sort of kicks in on different levels. So if you're making between 0 and 180,000 kroner, there is no bracket tax. If you're making above 1 million, it's 16.2% bracket tax. So this sort of will sort of slightly bring your taxes from 0 to about 50%, which is the highest amount of tax you can pay in Norway. So even though the tax rate is flat, you still have other taxes that put sort of more taxes on top of that. And one of them, and the biggest one, is the bracket tax. And also, in addition to the bracket tax, you're paying a national insurance contribution, which is 11.4% of any of your income that is sort of generated to you. And I will come back to that a little bit later, because this is the reason why we have several forms in Altinn that you need to fill out, because one of them is the money that you make, the alminnelig inntekt, the net income that you have, in which you have both if you're placing money in the bank and you're getting an interest rate, if you're selling property with a profit, or if you're making a profit from trading shares, etc. All of that goes into your income, and your income is defined as the net income after all costs are taken off, and that's a 22% tax on that. But in addition to that, the part of the income that is sort of up to you is your personal income, what you have contributed to, and you don't necessarily contribute much to the interest rates or to the the shares, etc., and whatever is on the Euronext, Oslo Børs, etc. That's not part of what you do personally. So that money is sort of kept away from what you make. That's sort of not a part of you. So 22% flat rate on all income, and then bracket tax and trygdeavgift, national insurance contribution, on what income can be related to your working or daily life. And as you can see on this slide here, the on næringsinntekt is 11.4%. And if you're making a salary, if you're getting a salary from the state, or if you're working in a company or as a teacher or doing anything like that, it's a lower rate. The rate is 8.2%. And the reason for that is because your employer is then paying the national insurance contribution, the arbeidsgiveravgift, of about 14.1%. So that sort of contributes to the whole accounting here, and that's why you're paying a slightly higher when you're just getting the on næringsinntekt. I'll come back to that when we go to a calculation form a little bit later on. So Other tax elements is the personfradrag, which is standard deduction, which everyone gets. And this is why we have the term tax-free card in Norway, because basically what happens is there's no thing as a tax-free card, but it's called that because what happens is when you're making 51,300 kroner, your standard deduction personfradrag sort of kills that income, and your base for the tax calculation is then zero. So basically what you're saying, if you're making up to 50,000 kroner in Norway, you're paying no tax. And when you go above that, you're paying 22%, you're paying some bracket tax when you exceed certain levels, and you're also paying national insurance contribution. And then you also have the minstefradrag, which is a standard deduction given to all salaries. So if you're having a salary income of 200,000, there is a minstefradrag of about 104 or 45%, maximum 104,000, and a lower amount of 31,800. And this is quite a big standard deduction, more than many people have as regular costs. And this minstefradrag is supposed to include your clothing, and you need to have a TV or follow the newspapers or whatever. All the costs that you have of being an employee, that goes into that minstefradrag. And when you're running your own business, your self-proprietorship, then they're saying that, well, you don't get the minstefradrag because you have a deduction for the actual cost that you have of running your business, which is only partly true because the regulations for getting a deduction has sort of evaporated through the last 30 years. So basically you're not getting a lot of cost deductions. We'll come back to that later when we look at an example. But so my saying is that, well, why don't we give this minstefradrag to everyone, so that you can say, well, if you have these costs that are lower than the minstefradrag, so instead of doing your bookkeeping and accounting, etc., you'll just take your standard deduction at 45%, a maximum of 104, and a bottom of 31,000. But still, they're not listening to me. But maybe next year, who knows? So maybe, hopefully, that will come across. But up until then, the minstefradrag is only for the employees. Okay, so we have in Norway also something called the wealth tax, which is a tax based on your net worth. And this is not necessarily your market net worth, because your net worth can be, if you have 10 million in the bank, that's 10 million net worth. If you have 10 million in a house, that's probably like 1 million in terms of taxable net worth. If you're owning a company, that's probably also lower than the actual market value of the company, etc. So there's a lot of things going into this calculation, but just as you know, we're spending a lot of time on the wealth tax today, but it sort of kicks in when your net tax value, net tax worth exceeds 1.5 million Norwegian kroner, and it's 0.85%. So it's not necessarily a very high tax, but of course it's a very high tax if all your money is in property. So you have property for 200 million, you still don't have any money to buy the bread in the grocery store, because you can't pay with property. So it's sort of it's a tough tax for a lot of people in Norway, but still also 0.85. We're not going to spend more time on that today. So let me give you an example of the taxes in Norway, just to give you just a heads up on how big is your taxes when you take care of, when you have both the tax on the alminnelig inntekt at 22%, when you have your national insurance contribution, and when you have your bracket tax. So just to give you a quick note on that, if you're making 50,000, like I said, this personfradrag comes straight in and takes off that, and you're basically paying 0% tax in Norway. So, but if you're making 100,000, it goes up to 22,000 in taxes, so basically around 22%. If you're making 500,000, you're basically paying 33%, and if you're making 1 million net profit, all contribute to what you do as a person, you're paying slightly under 40% tax in Norway. And if you exceed that, it's going to increase up until about 50%, which is the highest tax rate sort of in general. There is a link here if you want to click on that. You can go also and you can calculate exactly how much your tax is going to be. I don't think it's in English, but it's still possible to calculate if you want to know. But these are sort of the main areas, circa figures, that you need to be thinking about when you're making, well, I'm thinking I'm going to be making about 700 this year. Well, I have to put aside 35% tax, not to be in a horrible tax situation at next year. Yeah. So just to give you an overview on that. So let me talk a little bit about the deductions. And there is a standard deduction rule in Norway, which is quite simple and pretty good formulated. Although this is a poor translation, this is my translation of it. But the tax deductions are given for costs incurred to acquire, maintain, and get taxable income. And mark this, it's taxable income. So if you have costs, refurnishing your house that you have lived in for over a year and you're going to sell it, that's not taxable income, so you don't get a deduction for those costs, etc. So this is just to get taxable income. So basically what this tax regulation is saying, that any cost that you have to acquire and maintain and get taxable income, you have a deduction for that. But then the next sentence says regulations that clarify it, extend or restrict tax deductions for these costs are given in 610 to 632 and a lot of, like, millions of papers and that's why I have a job, and I'll have a job for at least 3 lifetimes, because this is not a very easy area. And let me just also clarify that no deductions are given for private costs for the taxpayer or his or her family here in living costs, food and expense. If I go to Oslo tomorrow to do a lecture, I will have a deduction for the costs and the food in which I go to Oslo. But if I go to Oslo and I have to get people to babysit my kids or to clean my house while I'm away because I've made a mess today, etc., that will never be tax deductible, because that is a private cost for the taxpayer, even though it secures my taxable income in which I get paid for the Oslo trip. So this is the definite already in the regulation. It's very strict on this, and then we'll get to other types of deductions as we go along through the actual example. But the Bible of tax deductions, it's called the Skatte-ABC, and it's a big book, about 1,800 pages now, and it's given out. It's coming out every November, and now they've stopped printing it, so it's not available in physical print, but it's available in a searchable PDF file. You can find it on Skatte-etaten. We'll put up a link for you there, because I see the link here has fallen out, but there is a separate chapter here. If you want to learn Norwegian, it's still not in English, but if you want to learn Norwegian, there is about 6 pages or 5 pages that is only for artists, in which gives you just a quick update on what is sort of meant by this tax, Norwegian tax law. So that's there, and that's a big Bible in terms of what you can deduct and what you cannot deduct, and what is taxable income and what is not taxable income, etc. So there is a lot of information in there. But then again, we'll have to admit that the næringsoppgave that we'll soon go through does have a lot of information on what you put in the different posts as well. So it sort of gives pretty good clues along the way. I just saw a pop-up on my screen in terms of is there a question there, Aslak, or is it just
let me see if there's a question somewhere.
I don't see the chat. I only see a small picture of myself on the left side of the screen, and I see the big presentation.
Okay, no, it wasn't a question so far. Can I just say that before we move on, that you have you received some questions in advance that you will answer later on.
Yeah, I have those, and I will answer them. Some of them along the way, and definitely come back to all of them later. So yeah, we'll get through that as well. So let me just draw you to, before we go to the næringsoppgave, let me talk about some important principles. And it's a lot of text here, but one of them, and the most important principle for you as a visual artist, is the cash basis principle, which basically means that when you get paid is when you have the income. When you pay for the costs, that's when you have the cost. On the other side, I'm not a visual artist. I'm a consultant, so I make my money when I deliver the services. So if I'm delivering a services today and I send a bill for this service and I don't get paid until next year, I'm still taxed today. If I get delivered a computer in just before Christmas and I don't pay it until next year, it's still a cost of this year's accounting. And that's called the opptjenings principle, the timing of when you sort of make your income. But here, When you are a visual artist, you have the cash basis principle, which is actually the day of the payment, or on that day payment could have been made. So you can't, if I'm buying a work of art from you and we agree on a price of, let's say, 20,000 kroner, and I come to you and I say, I want to pay you today, and you say, no, I want to get paid next year because I have so much taxes this year. That's not a great, that's a good example, but that's not legal. So then you still have to get taxed today. So the cash basis principle is important here. And also there is the no inventory value on your own art. So if you are making art for an exhibition that has a sales value of 2 million kroner, you're not taxed on that until you actually sell it. If you're buying other art or buying art from other artists that you are going to resell at a later stage, that will give you an inventory value of the value that you pay for the art, but your direct cost of production and the hours that you put into it, you will not be taxed on that until you sell it. There is an exempt from the næringsoppgave for billedkunstnere if your gross income is less than 50,000 kroner. So if you have just started out and you're just coming out and you made like 30,000 last year, you have a very easy way to go. I'll show you how to do that. It's a very simple way of delivering your næringsoppgave. And also, I just wanted to let you know that a lot of people ask me, what kind of accounting program should I use? Do I use Fiken? Do I use Visma e-commerce, or do I use Sandregning and all these things? And there is an exempt for that as well. If you have less than 600 transactions, you can use Word or Excel or anything that you like. You could use a piece of paper and write on it for bookkeeping, just to give you a summary of what income and what cost you have. But you have to have, when you issue a sales invoice, you cannot use, you have to print it on pre-numbered forms, or there needs to be automatic numbering, like Sandregning or Fiken or all those systems give you directly. And it needs to be kept in paper or in a format that's not easily can be altered with known programs. And we all know you can alter any kind of PDF, but still it's an acceptable system of using for invoicing. So that's just a quick on the accounting side. Other than that, what you need to think about is just to keep the posting from the RF 1242, the billedkunstneroppgave, or the næringsoppgave for billedkunstner, in which we'll go through here. So what I've set up here is just to give you an example of like a standard year. So I've made up this guy here who has a different kind of income. There is some sales, there is some stipend, and mark my words here. There are on the B here, you can see that the stipend is for a 2021 exhibition. We always get a lot of questions. What do I do? I've gotten this scholarship, but I'm not going to use it until next year. I don't want to be taxed on it this year, etc. What do I do for that? So I put that in the example here for you. And also we have net sales through a gallery. We got an exhibition fee here. We are doing some consultancy on other art projects, and we're doing some private sales. And the travel grant, which is on top here, of course, which is also pretty standard. How do I use that? I was paid this travel grant, but it's not taxable. Well, it is taxable, but normally when you get 20,000 to use 20,000, your net profit is zero. So in reality, it's not taxable. But if you're not using it to travel, then it's taxed at the 20,000. So we'll come to that as well. So what I've said here is we have total income paid in 2020 is 210,000 krona. And exclusive of the 2021 scholarship, it's 110. So that's what we need to look for when we go to the næringsoppgave. I'll show you how to do this in a short while. And then we're looking at some costs incurred here. We've got materials, we got production assistants, we paid an accountant, and we got a new printing machine, because a lot of people are asking me, how does this depreciation thing work? And what happens when you buy things that's worth more than 15,000 kroner and has a longer life value rather than buying something at 8,000 kroner, which is going to be broken next year, etc. How do we use that? And I put in this in the example just to give you a quick note on that as well. And we got studio rent here, we got some freight costs, we got some travel costs, and we got telephone and internet, which also has a slight thing you need to remember about your private use of the telephone and the internet. So you're looking at costs paid at 74,000. If we just take the 210 minus the 74, we've made a profit this year, a cash profit of 35,600. plus the 100,000 that we still keep in our account for the 2021 exhibition. If we look away from the machine, because we're not going to get a tax deduction on this machine directly, we'll get part of it this year and part of it next year over the life value of it. So if we take that out, we're up at 60. If we take out the complex rules or the not so complex rules, depending on how much time you've spent here, about the telephone and the internet, the electronic communication, which says that you have a full value, you have a full deduction on everything, but you have to take out 4,392, and God knows where that number came from. But the 4,392 krona, you cannot get a tax deduction for that. So that will say that is your private use of these things. Take that out. And then we're fine with whatever you put on top of that. So, except for voting at Idol or things like that, we're talking about the internet and we're talking about the telephone usage, normal usage of the telephone, not voting and paying your training fees through your VIPs or phone or whatever. That's something else. So we'll come back to that as well. So we're looking at this, and then we're back at 65,000, which is going to be your net, except the telephone rate. I'll show you the calculations here. H, this is the H minus the Q equals the 35,608, etc. And then we have the net income before or after the depreciation. So what you say is that this printing machine is 25,000 kroner. When I bought it new, I'll get a 5,000 or a 20% deduction on it this year. So 5,000 goes into the accounting this year. So I'm basically sitting with 60,000, which will be my taxable profit on this example here. I'll show you how to do this in the nice upcover, and we'll come back to every point here as we go along. Still no questions, Aslak?
So far, so good.
Fantastic. We'll go along. I assume nobody is sleeping, so hang in there. Okay, so what I've done this year, because I'm not longer in the PwC, I can do whatever I want with in terms of branding, etc. So what I've figured out is the Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road, is actually just as long as this Skatte-melding is. So every slide here, you'll see the lyrics from The Long and Winding Road, and it's one, so you know how long. The song is about 3 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that, but it's got 30 lines or 29 lines, I think, the full lyrics. So that means we're 29 slides to go. And if you think of this song, you'll get through the Beatles song and you'll get through your Skatte-melding, not in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but during this course. So we'll go through that. Hang on with me as we go along here. The Long and Winding Road, which is quite also, I thought, a good example of what this is. So you go into the Altinn and you think you can press this button here to the tax report, but you really can't. If you do it, you still end up in Altinn. This is because your tax report, the new version, is not ready. So if an ordinary employee clicks on the Til Skatte-melding, they come to a new portal under Skatteetaten, but everyone else of us, we have to. So you can basically press the login to Altinn straight away, or you can press this button up here, or you can press Til Skatte-melding, and still end up in the same place, and it's going to look like this. That leads to your door. Isn't that fascinating how the words sort of are made for this tax report? Anyway, so what you see is we're going to look for this form here. Is there a hand there, Aslak? Is that an old hand or a new hand?
Yes, it's a new hand. It's a question. Can you repeat the amount we need to subtract from internet and phone?
Yeah, so you can subtract every amount, but you need to take away 4,392 krona. That is the definition of private usage for 2020. So if your total costs of phone is 3,000, then you're basically ending up with nothing, because then you take away 3,000. So the maximum amount that you take away for private usage is 4,392. Yeah. So
we'll see if there's a follow-up question. But
yeah. I'll show you the post in the nice upcover as well, so it's easy to see there if you click on it. Yeah. Brilliant. So what you're looking for is this RF 1030. So RF means regnskapsformular in Norwegian, which is accounting form or accounting sheet, if you like, 1030, which is skattemelding for personal næringsdrivende, personlig næringsdrivende here. So this is the one you want to press, and you want to press this go to skjemautfylling here, and that should give you this thing that will never disappear again. This is where you need to make your decision, and you have some decisions that you need to make here, and this is not a very impressive side from Alten, because a lot of people actually fall out on this first question because they're thinking, what the hell, we got 8 different kinds of næringsoppgave here. How should I do this? And let me give you just a quick one for the very easy one. If you have a gross income of less than 50,000, you can take the very, very easy way out, and you just press this button here without næringsoppgave. My sum income does not exceed 50,000, and and these vilkår that are here, I am within those vilkår, and those vilkårs are pretty easy. I cannot think of any of you here that don't fill those. So basically, you can just go straight in here, and you click on the continue button, and then you have 2 options. You have simple næringsforhold, that is not supposed to be specified with attachments, and that is if you have depreciation. And if you have less than 50,000, my guess is that you probably don't have started with depreciation and big machinery yet. And if your personal income varies from your næringsinntekt or your net income. So if there is a difference between what profit you have made and the amount of profits that comes from whatever you as a person has done, if there is a difference between those two, you need to fill out this personinntekt schema as well. I'll show you the standards of this later on. But normally, if you are in this 50,000 category or lower category, you can press this button here. I have simple næringsforhold, and then I just come in here, and all I do is I just press on næring, and there's nothing here called visual artists, etc. But the other ones are like fishing and farming and stuff like that. So it's very hard to not find the on næring button, and you have to put in where your commune is. And for me, it's Bergen. And I say if I have 45,200 in income and my costs are 16,200, and you see that the driftsresultat, the net profit is 29, and the beregnet personinntekt, the personal income, is 29. It's not a double taxation. It's just that these 29 are taxed at 22%, and these 29 are taxed for the bracket tax and for the national insurance contribution. I'll show you how that works later on. But this is the most simple form of næringsoppgave, and you've just pressed this lagre back to the save, go back to the overview, and you're basically done. You'll come back to this one. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of you are making a lot more than the 50,000, so you'll have to go for the full næringsoppgave for billedkunstner. And that's also a case here. We saw a lot of companies last year trying to, or in 19, they wanted to make as little profit as less. So they put in all the receipts that they basically confide in order to get the costs and everything up, and the profit, the taxable profit, to basically zero. And then COVID-19 came, and they wanted to apply for lost income in NAV, and NAV goes into their accounting as well. You see, you haven't made any money the last 3 years, so you're basically not eligible for any payments from us, and that's a sort of a catch. So try to be as I mean, there are costs, of course, everyone has a lot of costs, but try to be sort of, it has to sort of balance off. If you're making 100,000 in income, your costs normally shouldn't be 150, unless you're starting up that year and you have heavy costs that hopefully will evolve next year, etc. So there is a balance here, and I can only say that whenever you complete any one of these næringsoppgave, it's an automatic checkup from the Skatte-etaten, and one of the things it checks up is the balance between the income and the costs. So if there is huge other costs, or if it sort of doesn't balance up over the sort of the first 6 years of your service, maybe it's not something, maybe it's not called næring, maybe it's just a hobby, you know, and that's why it's there is a regulation. And that's also a question that we get a lot, because when you're starting up as an artist, or as any person really, if you're trying to run a consultancy business or whatever you're starting up, normally you're not going to be making a lot of money for the first couple of years, and it's completely natural to have losses both in year 1 and year 2 and year 3. And the question is, how long will that go until you get a letter from the tax office? And normally that letter comes after 3 years. It's still not illegal to create a loss, but then they'll probably ask for, you know, what is your business plan, and are you looking to make money on this? Because there are definitely visual artists that are making a lot of money. So it's definitely possible to make money from this, and it's definitely possible to make money from consultancy, etc. But they want to know, how are you doing in terms of this? And also, let me also say that when you are starting out, if you just started out in 2020 and you haven't made any income yet, but you had a lot of costs, you had to get your computer, you had to buy in painting, you have to buy a lot of things to start your business, those costs are still tax deductible. So you'll have a loss in 2020, and when the incomes come later on, then you can have a deduction for that as well. So don't hesitate to produce this näringsoppgave even if you're making a loss. So what most of us then have to fill out is this RF 1242 for the billedkunstner. And this picture is one of the pictures that definitely will fresh up over the next couple of years, because it's not a very elegant way of because I mean, who knows what's näringsoppgave 1 in terms of 2 and in terms of 5, etc., etc. But for us visual artists, it's this one here. So we press that one, and you come straight into your tax report. And this is the second place where it says the rain washed away, and basically it looks like it washed away your whole näringsoppgave here, because there's absolutely nothing. You come in here and you see nothing in terms of this. And this is, don't panic when you come in here. You have to click on the attachment button up here, which I've highlighted in red for you. If you click on that, then you come into here and you see that it's marked here, but there's still nothing in it. It just means that it's produced a blank näringsoppgave for billedkunstner 2020. So what you need to do is you need to press that here, or you need to press this change button here. So if you press that, you will come into the actual näringsoppgave, which will then have pre-filled. You need to fill in your telephone number, and if you have an external accountant, you need to fill that in here as well. That's basically what you press on page 1. So this should be pretty easy to get through. And the first page is the tilleggsopplysninger, the additional information that you want to give. And this is basically if you have a private studio in your private home, they want to know how many square meters that is, how many square meters are you living in, and how many square meters is your studio, etc. You need to fill out this. And also they want to know if any of the costs that you have are linked to a salary that you have been paid. They want to know yes or no on that, and normally that's a no. I haven't pressed that button, but normally it should be a no. And also, let me give you an example before I take your question there, Aslak. This is where I put in, I have received in November 2020 a scholarship of 100,000, in which is to be used in 2021, shown in post 306 and 308. So if you have any kind of income like that in which you want to postpone, if you like, postpone to 2021, you should use these 2 posts. We'll come back to those 2 points, but you should give that as additional information already on this page 1 of your billedkunstneroppgave. Aslak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's a bit more of a practical information because of the letters here might be a bit too small to some people. You can press, at least on my screen, there's a button on your top right-hand side called View, where you can increase the size of the.
Oh yeah.
While leaving me standing here, yes. Just an information.
You can't press the screen and go like this, no.
Maybe. Okay.
And also, let me just say also that when you are in this Altin, you can obviously also increase your size and here. But these small letters, the small question marks here, these buttons are pretty good. So if you're wondering what this is, click on the button, and it actually gives you a good explanation. Although being in Norwegian, so you'll have to have another screen with Google Translate or something to figure this out completely, but we'll try to talk us through here. So what I'm saying here is that most of you, if you have these postponed scholarships and things like that, do give additional information here. It doesn't hurt to give additional information. Then if you come into the income side of it, you see that there are different categories. And this is what you want to do during the year when you're collecting your receipts and you're collecting your income and you're sort of systemizing this. You don't want to put all the receipts in a shoebox. You want to put them somewhere, and you want to categorize them within these sort of main points here, because that is what you need to do when you fill out your näringsoppgave. So if we have sales from atelier, sales from the studio, 25,000, that could be one sale or that could be 5 sales, etc. But the sum of it goes into this post here. If I click on this question mark button, it will give you an information on what typical is supposed to be put in here. So if you go back to my initial example, you can see the income that I have split up here and how this is sort of filled through in the form here. So the only thing that I'm not putting in here is the 100,000. In which we're going to put in somewhere else because it doesn't belong to 2020. So we're taking just the 2020 income, which is 110,000, and we're going to put them in these posts here. And some of you I know are registered for the VAT area. Normally all artists are exempt from the VAT area. There's a separate clause in the merverdiavgiftslov, the VAT law, in which exempts art from VAT. But some of you are also doing some consultancy or some graphic design, etc. That's VAT applicable, and every post that you put in here is excluding of VAT if you have that VAT deduction. So that's, but we could have had like 3-hour more course if we wanted to talk about VAT. So I'm not going to tell you any more than that, just on that topic now. So you put your income in here, and you see that this sort of this slightly blue form here calculates the 110,000. So, and this is where many times I've been alone, and I probably still am when it comes to these things. But if we look at the costs incurred, we have the materials, which is the purchase of materials, which is here on the 211, 4,000. I have the production assistance at 3,000 kroner, and make sure you get receipts for that, and make sure you don't pay anything out in cash. Even if you have a receipt, if you're paid in cash and it exceeds 10,000, then you're not getting a deduction for it, no matter what. That's one of the rules against the black economy, etc. So make sure you have good receipts, and make sure you pay by bank transfer to document all the costs that you have. And we have the accounting services here, which is basically in this post. We have the 12,000 that I used for the studio rent, and we have the cost of freight, 4,000 here, and the studio or the traveling, which was 18,000. And remember, this is where I got the scholarship for 20, and it only costs me 18 to go. So I'm making 2,000 on that, which will be in addition to my taxable income. And there is a specification for this 224, because obviously this is one of the posts that sort of could be a sort of mixed between private expenses and office expenses. So I'm just going to say here, well, travel to Oslo supported by public funding in post 205, which was the 20,000. So that sort of gives you an information on that. Normally you could say here, well, if there was a lot of costs here, I could say, well, I won this artist in residence scholarship. I was 3 months in Berlin, and I've put in the costs of that. I've not put in meals every day, but I've put the airplane ticket, and you can give additional information in this post here. Is that a question there, Aslak?
Yes. The question is, what is a valid receipt for payment of studio rent? Like things that happen by bank transfer.
Yeah. So normally, if you're just paying your studios, you're paying the studio. Let's say for this case, I'm paying 1,000 kroner every month, but I'm not getting a receipt for that because it's just a bank transfer that I've put in like a fast or regular payments scheme. But normally I have a contract. So if I have the contract saying that this is your studio, you pay this, you pay 1,000 a month, etc. So that contract will be the documentation, or an email confirming my studio rent along with the bank statement, etc.
Okay, there's actually 2 more questions. And
Yeah.
now I just realized I'm unable to start my video because the host won't let me. There's something wrong with this this Zoom.
Oh, damn it, this host.
Anyway, it's okay. You can just imagine what I look like. There's the question about no cash rule. Can we use bank statements to prove that we paid a specific amount to someone for their services? Is that enough?
No, so that that only specifies that you've actually made the payment, but it doesn't specify what you paid for, and that could be basically anything from from this and that. So you need a receipt as well to show what you've actually paid for, what services you have acquired, or what materials that you have acquired.
The questions keep coming in here. Do you deduct your home office as well in 220? That's
there's a lot of questions about that, and normally if you have a home office that is a separate room and it's not used for anything else than the office, then you can have a deduction. The standard deduction is 1,850 krona per year, so it's not a great deduction. And the reason why many people avoid it is because it also says that, well, I've been running a business from home, which might be complicating if I'm selling that home and I try to get a tax-free sale. Now, I've been living in this home, and the tax people come back and they say, well, you haven't been living there because you've only been living in 80% of it. The 20% you've deducted as a cost in your company. So you have to produce an income statement of 20% of the sales price, etc. So that is sort of complicates it. And this standard deduction is only 1,850, but that is possible to use, and you can put that in here. Atelier in egen privatbolig. You can put the 1,850 in there, and normally you wouldn't be in a situation where you have troubles with the tax authorities coming to the sale of the house or whenever. If you have a separate apartment, like you say, instead of, I have this apartment in my house that I want to rent out, and it's a tax-free rental income. So instead of renting it out for 6,000 a month, I'm going to put my studio there, I'm going to put my business there, and I'm going to claim a tax deduction for that. That's also a possibility, but then you're having trouble saying that, well, there has been a næring, or there has been run a business in the home, and it's not a tax-free home to sell anymore. So that's sort of, but if you have a separate room and it's completely used for only for the office or for the studio, then you can have a tax deduction if you own the home. If you rent the home, then it's the same regulation, but then you're actually paying something for the rent. So if I have an apartment, it's got 3 rooms, it's got my room and kitchen and all of that stuff, and it's got the office. So if that office is 10% of what I'm paying, and now I'm paying 10,000 a month to rent that apartment, I can actually deduct 1,000 krona every month for that, because then it's you can use the actual square meters of the office that is separate, and there is a market price of 10,000 krona per month, so that gives me a deduction.
There's also another one that's pretty, I guess it's the same. How do you show receipt for your home studio if it's part of your rent? I guess you already answered that.
Yeah, normally you have a rent contract and you have a drawing of the apartment, and you can sort of like mark the room that this is the office. And should there be a knock on the door, then you better.
This is me.
Yeah, better take off everything that's not sort of related to your business in that room very, very quickly.
Can I ask, are there any? Do you know if there are any changes to 2020 in this particular, because of a lot of people being forced to work from home?
Yeah, no, and there still haven't been any sort of standard deduction, and there has not been an increase in the standard deduction for home office, etc. But definitely it's one of the topics that have been discussed. Also, what they have done is they've given up. There used to be, so if you're it's called this home PC scheme that was many years ago. So if your employer or your company that you work in, is paying for your home computer and your home screens, and you get a new chair at home and you get a new desk at home and stuff like that, that has sort of been, they're looking away from that. So those costs, they don't necessarily mean that you've gotten a taxable income if you get those services from your employer. And if you don't have an employer, if you're running your self-proprietorship and you have these costs, they can easily be deducted. But that's the cost of the computers and office chair and inventory, if you like, and equipment. That's fully deductible.
There's more questions. There's the rest for you here. How much can I deduct for meals while in an art residency program? I guess if you're if you're on an art residency, say it could be in Dale or it could be in Portugal.
Yeah. So the rules are not very different if you are in Dale or in Portugal. Of course, I'd rather be in Portugal, knowing that Dale is
No offense. There's a lot of
no
places in
offense.
Dale. You're talking about the wrong Dale.
Yeah. No, there are many great people from Dale, and it's a great place to drive by when we go to Voss. But and they have very nice salmon river there as well, and very good fabric. The Dale of Norway factory.
No,
is
we're
quite
talking
good.
Dale in Sunnfjord. It's another place.
Oh, you're talking there's Dale everywhere. That's
Yeah.
Dale and Sylfjord is beautiful. So anyway, if you go on a short travel, so let's say I do an artisan resident, I'm going to do two weeks in Oslo. I have every cost that I have, because that's a travel expense. I go to Oslo and I have to eat while I'm in Oslo, and then I go back. But if I go to Oslo for 3 months, it's a quite different thing, because basically then I'm living in Oslo. I normally don't have costs of food at home, etc. So then you basically just moved your office to there. So I wouldn't suggest that you'd have full meal deduction when you are basically just living elsewhere. So because then you're spending so much time, and I don't know exactly how many days sort of that sort of switches in between a trip or a permanent stay, if you like. But normally I would say that if you're there for a couple of weeks, or you go on tour, or you do things like that, then it's going to take a month or two, and you travel around, then you have full deduction for the meals as a travel expense. But if you're basically moving to Berlin or to Portugal or to Dale in Sunnfjord to spend 6 months there to do your next exhibition, then you basically just moved your office, and the same rules and regulations apply as you were at home.
Okay, good, thank you. There's at least a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
Can you claim purchases for second-hand equipment or materials made on Finn.no and similar?
Yeah, that you can, because Finn is a marketplace. So if you're paying a market price for a product there, if you buy an old printer, or if you buy whatever you buy from Finn.no, you make sure you make a bank transfer, and you have a receipt in form of the print from the print screen of what you've purchased, etc. And sometimes, even if you're lucky, you can get the original receipt from the person that you buy the equipment from, etc. So there is no regulation saying that you have to buy from a company. You can buy from private persons as well. You can even put in your own equipment. So saying that I started my business this year, but I bought a computer in the fall. So when I come out to this year, that computer is still basically worth the same. So I've put that receipt in my company this year as a sort of startup cost, if you like to. So that's also a possibility.
So it's so preferably pay with something like Vips instead of cash.
Yeah, definitely. So
there's a question. So there's a question relating to the art residency, and do you have to have receipts for those meals, or can you put up per diem?
Unfortunately, as long as you're not employed anywhere, you cannot use the per diem regulations, which is basically only for employees. So if you are traveling, you have to get receipts for food and for everything that you do. You cannot use the standard rates for per diem. Unfortunately, no.
At least 4 more questions here. If you're paying for a private consultant with an organization number, how do they make a receipt for you?
Oh, they invoice you. They send an invoice if and then provide the services. So if I helped you on something, Aslak, then I would say send you an invoice to the agreed price and write on it what I have consulted you on, etc.
But surely you're doing this for free, aren't you?
Yeah. Of course, always.
Today, just kidding. Thank you. What does one do with a working grant that is already taxed? Does that need to be mentioned again? I don't know if that's been taxed in a previous year, if that's got to do with that.
Yeah, normally you wouldn't get a grant that has been taxed, but I'm not sure I understood that question. But
yeah, I mean, of course they're not taxed, but you've spoken of this. If it says trekkfritt, it doesn't mean that the tax has been deducted.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's tax free. It's just not it's just not applicable for a tax deduction upon payment. So it's still taxable, but they don't deduct tax when they pay you out, like an employer does when they pay you a salary and they deduct your withholding tax.
So sorry if that's the correct, if that's the answer you're looking for. Fine. If not, you can answer that. Okay. Some of my invoices this year are from other countries, and I was paid in other currencies. What's the procedure there? Yeah,
you need to do your currency exchange rate on the day as if it was. So you need to report everything in Norwegian kroner. So if I got $3,000 on the 29th of September last year, then I need to go into the norgesbank.no and find the exchange rate. Even though it hasn't been exchanged yet, it's sitting in a US dollar account or something. I had to find that exchange rate and use that figure and convert it to NOK.
Thanks.
Normally you're paying with a Norwegian credit card or something like that, and it sort of gives you the conversion, which is obviously sometimes is higher than the actual Norgesbank rate at that day. But
if I have professional dancers, okay, I'm going back to the grant question. The working grant was taxed when I was getting it, as the working grant counts as 50% employment.
Oh, okay. So it's an arbeidsstipend as a salary. So then it's completely held out. It's not going into this næringsoppgave. That's going down. Every type of grant and salary goes directly in the skattemelding, and it doesn't go into this næringsoppgave. And also, you make sure that you don't have any costs that relate to that. You cannot put those costs in here because they go into actually the minstefradrag, as I was talking about earlier. So. Yeah.
Yes, that's sorted out. Thank you. And thank you, Jessica, for pointing that out. Thank you. If I have professional dancers, performers, musicians, and costume designers, where can I put their fees?
Oh, yeah. That is production assistance here. I'd like to have professional dancers and costume people as well, but you can either put them in this kostnader til faglig bistand or you can put a production bistand. It really doesn't matter which one of the choose. You can click on this button if you put either 214 or 215, depending on how much work they do in this project.
There's some people here, by the way, who ask questions in the chat. Can you please ask them on the Q&A? Because the chat is just sort of a continuous stream and it's hard to find all the questions.
So should we move on a little bit and then come back to some of the questions?
Yeah, there's two questions, but let's move on and just wait for this. Yeah, go on.
Okay, perfect. I'll continue here. So we're back here and we've gotten the costs and we put them in here, as you can see, and this page is cut, so I'll go to the next one. And many times I've cried, and I've highlighted this one for you here. So just quickly here, the elektronisk kommunikasjon i næring, which is the telephone and the internet cost. You'll notice here that it says 2,000, and that's because my total costs are 6,392, and I deduct the standard rule for private use. So that's 4,392, and I can only put in 2,000 kroner here, which is the remaining part of the exceeding part of the 4,392. If you also click on this little button here, the question mark button, it will tell you exactly that. So just make sure you figure that slight little thing there out. And this one here, you can see that there is, if your screen is good, you can see that this is marked dark blue, which means that you cannot put anything directly in here. You'll have to put that in at a later stage. But the 5,000 is the 25,000 and 20% of that, which I'm allowed to taxable depreciate this year. So I'll come back to that as well. So that relates to this new printing machine that cost me more than 15,000 krona. It will also give you some information on that. So basically that will mean that when I come down to the point 250 here, which is the net result or the net profit, it's going to tell me 60,000. And my pre-calculation says the same 60,000. So basically I know now that I have correctly filled out the form. I just need to put in some of the attachment forms that we'll come to just quickly. So anyway, you'll never know. This just goes right through. I wanted to put in here, if you have a private car that you're using in your company, I didn't have that for this example, but if I have it, it's very easy. You say, well, I've been driving. I had this exhibition in Drammen and I went back and forth many times, etc. So I've driven 1,000 kilometers in my næring or in my company last year with my personal car. Then I can just put 1,000 kilometers times 3 kroner and 50 øre. I put 3,500 directly into this here, and I will get a tax deduction for that. I cannot put gasoline or insurance costs for the car or repairs of the car, etc., or decreased value of the car. I can only put 350 per driven kilometer, and that's the way to use the use of private car in company. That's the post you want to put that into. If you have a company car, there is a separate form, and you have to do that completely. But I still haven't found any visual artists who will have use of of a separate company car yet. I know that some of them have a transportation truck or things like that, but that's a sort of different story. It's very, very seldom that you are in need of a company car, and the reason for that is because if it was the case in Norway that it would be taxably wiser to have a car that you're using personally and in your company, to have that car in your company rather than have it privately. Everyone would have a lot of companies with a lot of cars, so the tax rules are so that well, you can have a company car, but then you'll have a taxable income from your personal use of the car, and sometimes if it's a used car, etc., that will exceed the actual cost of the car. So it's not recommendable to use or to have a company car for most companies. For most companies, it's not something that's very elegantly taxable for you as an employer or as a person. So the many times I've tried, and this is where you put in the depreciation. If you see up to the right here, you can see that the cost price is 25,000. So the tax authorities are telling me that, I'm going to get a full deduction on the 25,000 kroner I've spent on this printing machine, but not the year that I've bought it, because obviously it has a lifetime value that's longer. And if I was to put this up graphically, it would give me a deduction. It would go something like this, and then when it falls under 15,000, I'll get the remaining deduction. And as we can see, this takes 4 years in this case, because the first year I will get 5,000 kroner as the tax deduction, which is 20%. The value in year 2 is 20,000. And then I get 20% of that. So I don't get an additional 5, I get 20% of the net value that's left. So that's 4,000, I'm down to 16. And then I get the new 20%. And then you see in year 4, I'm below the 15,000, which is in the standard rate. And then I get the remaining, which is then less than 12,800. So my tax deduction in 2020 is 5,000, and it's going to be 4 and 3,002 and 12,008. So that will be the full spread, and I'm going to get this deduction over 4 years. So this is what I have to show here, and I also have to show it in a separate form. I have to say annual, this year's saldo, which is the group. There is groups here. If you have an office machine, like a computer to do your accounting, that's group A, which is 30%. This machine is a printing machine in which I'm using as a machine for my production. It's group D with 20%. If I buy a helicopter or a ship, it's a completely different group and a lot lower tax. So there's different groups of rates, and this will show you in the form as well. You can see here, office machinery, group A, cars and trucks, group C, inventory, machinery, etc., group D, and this is where you put that in. And if you're buying an atelier big, if you're putting up a huge building on your property or buying a building as well, those will have to come in here as well. But that's a little bit more complicated. And normally if you have these sort of buildings and machinery, you might want to think about getting an accountant's help to do these taxes for you, so you get the maximum of the possible deductions. But in this case, we're going to put in 5,000, which you can see here as a white area. So you can put in 5,000 as this year's depreciation, and next year you go into 20,000, which is the value in year 2. So that the written down value at 31st of December 2020 will be 20,000. I'll show you why this is important, but this is where it sort of picks up the figures from. And then I want to show you, before we go into the questions there, Aslak, just quickly, the 100,000 that we postponed until next year. So normally you cannot postpone something that you have spent. So if I don't have this money in my bank account, I don't have a very good argument on why I shouldn't be taxed for it this year. So normally you would have it in your bank account and you would state that here in post 306, 100,000. I've gotten a scholarship, but I'm going to use it next year. And then I put the remaining of it here in the post 308, which is the liability or the debts in my company for 100,000. And I will see my net assets in this company is 20,000, which is the written down value of the machine that I bought for 25,000. We want to do some questions there, Aslak?
Yeah, I just also want to add that one can watch this tax course on YouTube later if you feel that
replay.
Yeah. So if there's something you missed out on, but yes, there are actually 11 questions, and some of them are related to things we spoke about earlier. There's a question from Anna regarding studio maintenance. I recently bought a holiday home. I made a studio on the attic, invested in some windows and walls. Can I deduct these expenses?
No, because it's still regarded as work on your holiday home. So you can't deduct the sort of buildings. I'm also in my holiday home at the moment, but I couldn't sort of walls and the paintings and everything is not tax deductible, but the printer and the papers and the inventory that I use for the office purposes will be tax deductible. So you can't do building work unless it's a separate building. If I buy the cabin next door and I say, well, this is where I'm going to start my business, etc., and if that cabin is regulated to run the business, then it will be a completely different thing. Then I would come into the this one here, which will have atelier bygg and the saldo groups and the depreciation schemes, etc. That would be a different story. Yeah.
Thanks. It was back to the talk we had earlier about arbeidsstipend and whether it was tax. Vederlags smaller arbeidsstipend.
Yeah.
You know this? Is that also not deductible?
Well, if you are taxed on your when you get paid, so if I'm getting this scholarship and for 30,000 and it's reported to me personally and they deduct 5,000 kroner in taxes upon payment, then it normally goes directly into the skattemelding, and also the costs related to that are sort of to be kept out of the næringsoppgave. So basically what keeps it in or out of the næringsoppgave is the question of has there been deducted tax upon the payment of the scholarship, and if it has, then it goes directly into the næringsoppgave. If it hasn't, it goes into the næringsoppgave along with the costs related to that special scholarship.
Okay, thanks. But unsure about this next one. Hi, where do you put the income from publishing a book? I don't know if it's an artist book or if it's more of a general book.
Oh yeah. Then you have this post here, other income, or other income from artistic. If it's an art book, let's say I have this. I just got this book here from Lotte Kornov about art. So if she is an artist and she produced this book, I would assume to find her income in this other income from artistic virksomhet in post 207.
But but otherwise 208 if it's
if it's completely different. So if I was the artist here, then I would get paid for this lecture, I would put that in andre inntekter, which is completely different because it's not the sort of an artistic performance we're looking at right now. I should have had those dances and the smoke machine, etc.
Thanks. I think you touched in on this a bit before. If I buy something that I use for both private and work, how do you deduct it?
You don't tell anyone about the private use of it.
You know, this is on YouTube.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. No. But I find it hard to think about, you know, what I would buy in my company that also would be, of course, you know, you know, if I wanted to watch a movie, I would use the computer to watch the movie, etc. But that wouldn't be you know, regulated as private use in such that it would be, you know, you can't get a deduction for that because you saw that movie last year, you know. So it's I find it hard to find a good example of what would typically be it all. So if, for instance, if I go to an exhibition and you know, I have to go to this exhibition in London and having this great opening, etc., and my wife comes along, which would be great, but I wouldn't get any deduction for her cost. So what I'd normally do, and then I would typically have that mix between personal and private, and say, well, and we wanted to extend it, so we say we go to this exhibition, that's going to take a day, but when we're in London we want to stay an extra 2 days. So normally then I would get the airplane ticket for myself back and forth. That would be tax deductible, and for the one hotel night, but I couldn't put in her costs, and I couldn't put in the extra 2 nights that we stayed for personal exploring of London, and that's an example of what if you have a mixed purchase.
There's I think you talked about renting a car and similar. If I use a bildeling car for my business, what can I deduct? I pay 6,500 krona deposits.
Yeah, then you cannot deduct the costs of bildelingen or the deposits or anything like that, but you can use the driven kilometers that you have. So if you use a bildelingen car, I mean, this doesn't say your private car, so it could be anyone's private car. So if I rent a car from bildelingen, I would typically drive 1,000 kilometers, then I would put in 3,500 kroner in this post here.
So it'd be considered a private car even though it's rented from a company?
even though it's rented.
Okay.
And if I rented a car permanently, it would still be the same. But if I'm having an exhibition in Dale in Sunnfjord next week, and I need to rent a van to bring my large paintings up there, etc., that would be a travel cost or an exhibition cost, as you can see here. Other or freight cost, you know, that rental of that car, because that would be rented specifically for that purpose for those days, etc. There would not be there wouldn't be a sort of personal gain by having that car that weekend.
Yeah, there's 2 other questions about cars from Matinka and Dan, but I think you got them answered. If not, please answer, ask the questions again. Let's see. Question from Laurie: do you have advice for what to do if you receive a grant as a collective or collaboration, because then the money sits in one person's account?
Yeah, and that's a classic situation where you do a couple of, let's say you're 5 artists and you're in a collective and you get a grant for 100,000, and it's going to be split for the you know, props to you for taking on that economic challenge, because then basically it's reported on and you have to report the 100,000 of the grant, but then you want to make sure that you're not taxed on the full 100,000, which basically gives you a need to get a receipt from your cooperative or your co-workers or the other people joining you in this collective. So make sure you get the receipt from every one of them for 20,000 each. So which basically gives you a 100,000 grant income, and then you would have typically this post here 214 kostnader til faglig bistand and rented help. There you will put the 80,000 that you have delivered to the 4 other persons, and the effect of that will be that you will be sitting left with your share, which is the 20,000. If you're doing more, I mean, if you're also paying for, you know, you're doing a full accounting here and you're saying that, well, of this 100,000, we're going to have material costs for this and we're going to have travel costs for that, etc. And whatever, if there is any money left, we'll split that in 5. Then you need to put in the gross. You put in the 100,000, you put in the material cost, you put in the travel expenses, everything, and you may need to make sure that you have the receipts so that you don't get taxed on the gross amount that you have received on behalf of the cooperative.
Talking about this, if you get a grant and there's a part of the money that you will is it part of your own fee, you know, how do you put that in the tax form?
Not sure the question there is part of your fee. So if you get a grant and your fee is in there, so you get a grant for 100 and you have costs for 60 and your fee is 40. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what
yes.
you put in the 100 and you put in the 60 in cost, and by definition, your profit will be the 40 that you will remain in. So that will end up sort of being your profit here.
Good. There's 6 more, but do you want to take a break from the questions and the gin and move on to?
Yeah, I'd love for it to be a gin. Like Barexton, these small spritz bottles of Barexton are quite popular.
Yeah.
And only 4.5%, I realized. But then again, they don't taste any alcohol, so you can drink too many of them without even noticing.
This is not necessarily the viewpoint of this, but I just have to make this as it's on YouTube. But anyway, there's 7 more questions now. Do you want to go through the in the end?
Yeah, we can do them in the end. Let's just quickly go into we've seen this depreciation. Are there any more questions on the depreciation?
Let me see. I think we'll just go on with this one and then take the questions in the end. Yeah.
Okay. So we've come through this, and we see that the net worth in the actual company is 20,000, which is the downwritten value of the printing machine that I have purchased. And then you come to the last page of the næringsoppgave, which you need to put in information about your artistic activity. And they want to know about your education. They want to know if you are part of billedkunst organizations, how many collective exhibitions that you have, how many separate own exhibitions that you had, if you've been competing in competitions, if you've been getting utstillingsvederlag or exhibition fees, and also about your planned exhibitions for future planned exhibition. And this is just not for this year or next year. It could be also an exhibition that you're planning, in 5 years' time, but that needs to come in here as well. In every case that I've worked through, this is also information in a good artist's CV. It does include most of this, probably not the planned separate exhibitions, but normally we just put here, please see attached CV as PDF vedlegg or as PDF attachment. So you just upload your CV and short information on that, and you don't need to fill out this form here. So this is just sort of like an informative side of the næringsoppgave. But do remember to put that in there. So basically, when you've done that, you come back into this page that gives you actually no information. This is where the technology is quite horrible, because now you've said that you've made 60,000. You've put in information about your printing machine. You've put in information about depreciation, etc., etc. And everything could be automatically calculated now and have you completed your taxes when you push that button. But still, it does absolutely nothing. It just gives you this næringsoppgave, and you can see here, there is no connection to the næringsoppgave. And this is where you need to sort of stay calm and remember what I've said in this course now. You need to push this button, you need to put in more attachment, and you need to choose some files here. So let me highlight that for you. You need to push this button, and you need to put in your CV, which is put in this here, choose file. I put in my CV here as a PDF form, and I need to include these 2 forms here. One of them is the depreciation form, RF 1084. That shows me that depreciation, the 25 minus the 5 is the 20, that we need to put that in a separate form, unless it's not going to go through. And we need to also define how much of that 60,000 that I said that I made in the næringsoppgave, how much of that is related to me as a person and my artistic engagement, and how much is actually the machines that are working for me. And of course, as a visual artist, it's a very little part that's not you. But if I'm Olav Thon, one of the biggest entrepreneurs in real estate, you can say that, you know, a lot of the income in the Olav Thon business is because of the properties, and not because the 188-year-old man runs around and claims rent and etc. It's not because of his working or daily working routine that he's making so much money. It has to do with the property and the machinery and the people that he has invested in. And that is what this form here, because what it does is it tries to shield your income, your 22% income, from whatever you paid bracket tax and national insurance contribution. So we want to figure that out. In this case, it's a very small and simple, but it could be a lot of money to save here. But you have to fill out these two forms. And I think also that was one of the questions for the pre questions that I've got in front of the course, is that someone is tried to complete the how-to guide on the visp.no, but it's still not getting completed. And this is because you need to file this RF 1224. So let me show you how to do these two forms as well. And you can always come back to this in the slide pack, and you can also come back to this on YouTube after Aslak has taken out my interest in the barracks and gin and things like that. So if you go into this form, and this is quite interesting, because when you click on this form, even though they know it's me, and even though they know what my birth number is, they still don't remember my postal code and where I live, which is the exact same information I had in the separate form. So this is also a fault that's hopefully fixed next year. And then you go into this, you come into this here, where you say, well, this is a machine. I've put in here, this is saldo group D, which is for machinery. And this is saldo number 1. And behind this little thing up here is this form, the taxpayer's share of a joint account in a sameie, and then you just press no on that, because that's very also seldom in these cases that we're looking at today. You press no to that one, and then you press the D, you press saldo number 1, which is, this is the first piece of machinery that I have. If I have several, if I have both machinery and I have a helicopter and I have an office machine, etc., I'll have 1 and 2 and 3, etc. You have to have one for each group. So if I buy one more machine, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have saldo number 2. It could also be an addition to the existing machine park, but that's not the example here. So I just put 1 here, and I put 20%, and I say this is on-næring, this is not fishing, or this is not foresting or anything like that. I use the on-næring, and then I want to transfer it, just put other here. Because you'll still be filling out those other forms. And I put here the new purchase cost price is 25, and nothing else. And oh, sorry. And then it calculates, this is an automatic. So if I put 20% here, even though I choose D, which is maximum 20%, it doesn't give me the 20%. So I have to put that in as well, another technical, interesting side. But when I put that 20%, it automatically said it's 5,000 krona. And then I get the 20, which is the remaining part. And they ask me, is it still physical machinery that goes into this? You haven't sold it or anything like that? And I say, yes. I can choose between yes or no. I say, yes, and I am complete in this depreciation form. And I just say, normally no linear depreciation. So you can skip page 3. I haven't shown that on you here. A linear depreciation, a linear tax depreciation, is when you, for instance, if I rent offices for 3 years, I do a rental contract for 3 years, and I have a full cost of refurnishing those premises. But when I leave the contract in 3 years, I move out of the contract, I don't own the furnishing, because that goes back to the landlord or the house owner. Then I could have a linear. I said, okay, I use 300,000 to refurnish the offices and build new walls and glass and, you know, do all that stuff and new flooring, etc. But I'm leaving the contract without anything. Then I have a linear depreciation. I can say those 300,000, I can do taxable deduction for 100,000 first year, 100 second, and 130, and I'm off the contract and finished in 3 years. Because if I put 300,000 in here, I wouldn't be finished taxable with the tax depreciation before, long into year 8, and I'd moved out a long time ago. So it would be completely stupid to have that kind of regulation. So, but normally if you buy a machine and like we do in this example, you use this and you skip the linear depreciation, just so you know that. And then we come into this personinntekt. And the thing about this is this form, and again, it doesn't remember my address, and it does not know, it knows my name, and it knows my personal identification number, and it doesn't even know what I do. So if I am a visual artist, in which all of you are, you have to go in here and you have to file 90.031, which is the næringskode, the work code that is registered in the Brønnøysund registry. So when you get your organization number, it also shows what kind of business are you running. And if you're running as a visual artist, it is this code here that you need to put in. You can find this code. If you're wondering what it is, you can find it. If you go into Brønnøysund on the registry and you type in your organization number, it will give you this code here, so you can put that in. So you need to put that in as well. And what this form is trying to do is, like I did talk to you in the Olav Thon example, this form is trying to tell you what income is from your business and what income is related to whatever your machinery puts in. So what it does is it puts in everything that you own, and it could be machinery, it could be ships or helicopters or buildings, etc. It's putting all that in, trying to create an average value of what that machinery actually does. And you can see I have 0 here when I started the year, and I have 20,000 when I ended the year. And I can choose here between what kind of value am I using, and I'm using the tax value. You can choose between accounting value, but still that would be the same in this case. So I'm using the tax value, and the average of those two is 10,000. So what it does is, in average, it gives me the 10,000 kroner. So this 10,000 is the average effect of the machinery in my business. So what it does is, and I have to fill out this form as well, unfortunately, the 60,000, it sort of seems to have forgotten it, but at least it tells you here that it's post 290 from the næringsoppgave for billedkunstner. So at least it shows you where to put it. So what it says, this form actually says that of the 60,000, we will shield you from the 10,000, that's sort of average value of the machinery, and it gives you a shielding rate, skjermingsrente, which is 0.8%. And unfortunately, it doesn't remember that as well. So you need to put that in by your own, and it's 0.8. In the standard næringsoppgave, it actually now knows that the rate is 0.8, but it's a flat rate, so it could have been there previously. But anyway, it shields you from 80 kroner. Isn't that fantastic? So what they're saying is, you did a great job, Christopher. You produced 60,000 kroner in profits, but 80 kroner of that profit wasn't you. That was actually your machinery. So we'll shield you when we calculate your national insurance contribution and your bracket tax. We will take off the 80 kroner that your machinery did for you, and we will only tax you of 59,920. And they said, well, if you want to split that between you and your wife, and this is a possibility that you have, if we say we would contribute to just as much, we wanted to split it, but we haven't done that this year. So everything goes to me, 100% to me. And those forms are filled out unless you come to the last point, and I have to choose between, is it fishing or a kindergarten in my own home? And this is definitely not, although it feels like I have a kindergarten in my own home many times. It's annæring and the 59,920. And then we complete the personinntekt schema, and then we come back to this form here. So now we've done everything, but it's not showing what we've done. But I know that we have done everything correct, but this technology is still not too good. It just says that it's posted your personinntekt onto the skattemelding. It still hasn't posted anything about the depreciation, and it still hasn't posted anything about the næringsoppgave. So what we need to do is we need to go back to the oppgave, and we see that 59,000 is there. That's great, but we're missing the næringsoppgave. So we have to push this endre button here, change, and then we put in the 60,000, which is other income. And it also says in the næringsoppgave, this is the post that you put it in. So 276 We put that in, press the OK button, and we get those two forms right in here. And we should also get the 20,000. I'll put that in when we put that out on YouTube. We should also get 20,000 kroner here as a net value of the machinery that we have gotten. So these 2 points, and this is again, you don't need to run the risk of say, oh shit, it's come in here 2 times, I'm going to be double taxed, etc. No, because this næringsinntekt, this goes 60,000, this is 22%, and this personinntekt is the bracket tax and the trygdeavgift. It's just 2 different ways of calculating, and this is where I'm shielded from the 80 kroner that my machinery did for me last year. And you can control the schema and you can start the insending, and you're basically complete. Before we go into the questions, I wanted to show you quickly how does this tax calculation work. So what I'm saying is my alminnelig inntekt is 60,000, but then I have the personfradrag, and I'm left with 8,700, which is the grunnlag. And then this amounts to 22. It's just a split between kommune and fylke and the state. So my 22% is actually 1,914 kroner in tax. It's not 22% of the 60 because of the personfradrag, which everyone gets. So it'll be a little bit lower. And then my bracket tax as started, as you know, from 0 to 180,800, the bracket tax rate is 0. So that basically takes off all of that, and I'm paying no bracket tax on this income. And the trygdeavgift, I am paying 59,000, and I'm paying 11.4% on that, and I'm paying 6,800. But there is a limit to that as well. If you're not making more than 54,000, it takes that out of the calculation. So my end tax for this example is 3,262 kroner, which is not a lot of tax for making the 60,000. So that's sort of the example all the way out. Let me just show you the last page here before we go into the Q&A session. And this is where you reach the end of the Beatles song, yeah, 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 yeah. And this is your way out should you not be able to complete this before the 31st of May, which is the deadline. There is a possibility to extend your delivery, and it's called RF 1114, and you can't Google it, or you can't find it in Altinn if you're running for the utsettelse. You have to say utsatt. It's a twist in the form. It will only find the form if it's spelled like this, but now you know that it's RF 1114, which gives you this service, and you just need to put in your reason. And I just put in here, I've gotten this horrible stretch in my muscle, and I can't get this done before the 31st of May, and it will actually give me a new date automatically till the 20th of August. Even though it says here the 30th of June, it will give me a new date until the 20th of August to do it. But I can assure you that this is not what you want to be doing in August. You don't want to be doing it in July either. And basically, if you're a salmon fisherman like myself, you don't want to be doing it in June. So there's no good reason for you not to do it before the actual or the original deadline on the 31st of May. And then you can leave 2020 behind and go on about your way and have a lovely summer. So let's do some last and final questions, Aslak.
Yes, I just one question here. Someone writes, I use Fiken and send all my numbers from Fiken to Altinn, but this year the form in Altinn is visually different. It isn't the same as what we're going through now.
Yeah.
The new form. I'm not sure what project funding and grant.
Yeah, as far as I know, that Fiken doesn't have the billedkunstneroppgave. So Fiken is going to export what we call the næringsoppgave skatt, which is a completely different form. Let me see if I can find that. If we go back to this one, so Fiken is going to export this one here, the næringsrapportskatt. So if you are a visual artist, you may very well use Fiken because it's a great system for keeping track of the receipts and everything, but you still probably need to report this manually in the næringsoppgave for billedkunstner. And you know more than me on this one, Aslak, in terms of is Fiken going to come up with a full-on næringsoppgave for billedkunstner accounting plan, etc.?
I think they are planning it. That's what I understood from
Yeah.
Last webinar we did.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll come as well. But as of now, you have to do this manually because the export function from Fiken is not suitable for the visual artists.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you only have to do RF 1224 if you have bought something for more than 15,000 krona?
No, you're going to have to do it if you are using your 1242 näringsuppgave. You're going to have to do this RF 1221 either way, or 1224 either way, the personintäktskällor. You have to do that anyway because you have to define how much of your income is even though if it's the same, even though you end up with the same 60,000, you still have to fill out that form, or Altinn is not going to let you come to the final stage of the skattemelding, which is
it was 1224, not 1242.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me just show you here. So yeah, so even if the amounts are the same, even if you haven't bought anything over, the only form you'll have to skip is the RF 1084 if you haven't purchased anything and you don't have anything in your balance sheet in terms of machinery, and you're not doing a depreciation, then you can skip this form, but you still have to produce the 1224.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, it's one of the last things you spoke about. What if your expensive machine breaks in a few months and you have to buy a new one? Do you still deduct it for many years?
Yeah, well, not necessarily, because it's then the machine is sort of sold at zero price, or if it has to be thrown away, then there is a different form that you can use, which is the profit and loss form. So if obviously if it breaks down, it's worth nothing, then you can deduct more than the depreciation, or you can transfer it to this give instant tapskonto form, in which I think probably doesn't give you more than 20% either way, but it would be the same. And also if you sell the machine for more than you've actually paid for it, or if it's how do you say, if it's depreciated down to 12,000 and then you sell it for 20, you can also postpone the income on that, and that's called the gevinst-tapskonto, which is separate form and it's slightly more complicated. So if you have issues like that, I would also suggest you to use a couple of minutes of professional help in terms of getting that form right.
Yep. Thank you. Is invoices enough, or do we need bank statements? No, you don't need bank statements, do you?
No, but if you have an invoice and you haven't paid it, so I would recommend to sort of keep both of them, and to always to recommend to have a separate bank account for your company or for your self-proprietorship, in order to have to sort of keep track. Because one we know here is that when you're using the cash basis principle, it's when you have actually paid. So if you can't document that you have paid, you might have a trouble claiming your deduction. So I would definitely suggest to have both.
Okay. If my income was less than 50,000 in 2020 due to the pandemic,
yeah,
is the best form to choose Uten Næring or RF 1242?
Yeah, definitely do the Uten Næring, the 50,000, where you can just put your income and your costs and nothing more.
Excellent. How do I deduct NAV COVID compensation for self-employed? Is that something you know?
Yeah, there is a form in the billedkunstneroppgave, but if there are some, I mean, just to be sort of specific, but not so specific on it, because there is like a million different COVID compensation schemes. So one of them is this one here. You will get a grant, and you put that directly into this 0.209. Which is the compensation scheme here. But if you've gotten what most of the self-proprietorships are getting, like a direct support from NAV, you find that directly in your selvangivelse. That will be, let me show you here. That will normally already be in this one here, näringsintäkt and personintäkt, when I open my salary form. So contribution from NAV will be directly here.
Automatically.
Yeah, automatically, and then it's sort of kept out of the näringsuppgave.
If you get a grant that you will split, you spoke about this earlier, how do you split this for like a collaboration? But not everybody has an organization number. How do they make a receipt?
Yeah, if if they don't have an organization number, they can't really produce a receipt for you, because then you are basically using a private person to assist you with a project, and you might end up with the tax. So what you have an option to do is to pay them a salary, but that's also complicates things, because you need to report it through Altinn, and you need to pay national insurance contribution, etc. But basically, it's the only way out if you're using people that cannot produce a regular invoice for their services. Then you have to pay them a salary.
Good.
Or use someone who actually has a company. So a lot easier.
Back to some questions about car that we had earlier.
Mm.
Do you need a travel log for private car? For travel deduction, that's the kjørebok, I guess.
Yeah. So you need to have a log. So you can't just put like 50,000 kilometers and no documentation of it. You need to keep a log on, when you've driven and how long you've driven and the purpose of the driving, etc. So normally I would just keep a log. There's a lot of logs. You can use an app for it. You can have a GPS tracker in the car. You can have one of these good old kjørebok, which you mentioned, also like which you can buy at a gas station, and you fill in just when you left, the time, and yeah.
It's KJÖRIBOK. What
Driving book.
What if I use a friend's car and just pay for gas or rent a car?
Yeah, you still so you can use a friend's car and you can pay for their gas, etc. But those receipts you won't put in your næringsoppgave. You'll only put the kilometers driven and the 3 kroner and 50 øre per driven kilometer. So you still use that even though it's not your private car; it's someone else's private car.
Thank you.
And what you pay to rent the car is sort of indifferent to the form, because that you only get 350 per driven kilometer as a tax deduction.
Thanks. If I made a loss last year, can this be taken into account this year? I mean, 2019 and into account.
Yeah, and the question there is if it was a reported loss, it would come up on your tax form here automatically, because then it would be a part of your tax report for 2019, and your negative income that year would sort of be brought forward to 2020. If you haven't reported anything on that year, you would have to take in the costs and the income and the sort of the actual receipts. You'll have to take that into your 2020. And also I recommend, if you do that, if you bring in receipts from the previous years, I would definitely recommend you to put in here other information, and to say that, well, I have put in the 20,000 in which I spent in the fall of 2019 in order to get my company up and running, or to realize the project in 2020.
Thank you.
Give that additional information. Yeah.
I have a mixed income as an artist and as an arts producer. Do I need to fill in a different form in addition to the RF 1242?
No, let me say that if depends on where your main income is. So if your main income is to be a producer or to be a consultant, then you would use the næringsrapport or the næringsoppgave 1. You wouldn't use this visual artist's form. But if that is your main income, you are supposed to use this one, and then whatever income that you have, it's sort of other income from artistic or other income here. So.
Lovely, thank you. I lived and worked in Norway last year as a freelance artist, but I still don't have a personal number because I don't have a visa due to Corona delays. Can you file 2020 taxes after the deadline, or should I file the Norwegian work in the country I lived before Norway?
Well, if you don't have a D number in Norway, you're not able to file any taxes, because you can't get into the Altinn portal, in which requires a number for you to go in. So then I would suppose that, and this is more of visa questions. We have these from time and often, and it's sort of not my area of expertise, but I would normally say if you're sort of from a different country and you've just been partly working in Norway at the time, and you haven't a D number and you can't report your taxes here, I would definitely report it in your home country to make sure that income and costs are not lost during the way. If it was the other way around, and you would have Norway is sort of has tax treaties with basically every country in the world, and if I'm making money in the US or any other country, I would still have to sort of bring the income and the costs back to Norway as if it was earned in Norway, and I would be taxed in Norway as if it was income in Norway. And then I get a deduction if I have paid local taxes in any other country. So it's a sort of more complex situation, and sounds a little bit like a visa situation as well.
Let's see. I have bought a machine for 14,000 kroner, but I just started my company this year with no income at the moment. Could that machine be added as taxable income for this year?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Hopefully, you won't have a taxable income from the machine that you bought, because that would be a taxable cost. But you could put it straight into this post 218, which is a cost price below 15,000.
Okay, thanks. If I get a fee from sitting in the board of an art studio, a organization of less than 10,000 kroner, do I have to write it in as income?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, normally this art studio wouldn't pay you if it wasn't, or they would pay you if you're sitting on a board. You would normally get a salary from that board, and it will come directly into your skattemelding. If it's one of those organizations that can pay out up to 10,000 kroner, ideal and public organization, they can pay up to 10,000 tax-free on your behalf. It would still be part. I mean, if I did the same, which an artist or the art is not part of my normal business, so I could consider it as tax-free on my behalf, because it's not what I'm working on. But if I was sitting on the board of an accounting thing or something to do with economic figures, etc., it would be a part of what I'm actually living off, and then I would have to tax it as income, even though the payment wouldn't be taxable from whoever paid me. So my answer to that would be yes. I would definitely claim it or show it in one of these posts here, 207 or 208.
There's one question here let me just actually link in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, the question is, do you have any recommendations regarding accountants or firms that are specialized in visual arts taxes that we could contact? I can just put it in the chat. As a member of VISP, you get a discount both on the use of Fiken, and you can get discounted from an accountant called Frekkhaug Regnskap, which you can do all online, and they do on your annual taxes, they do a discount if you're a member of VISP. I can put the link. It's on visp.no. You can probably just read it if you are logged in, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, you can sign up for VISP for free. There's no more demands than that. I'll put that in the chat. Okay. There's 3 more questions, and we'll stop there. Okay. Do you agree? Or do you want to stay up all night?
Well, I can, I can go on this. There's something probably happened to me when I was a child that, that gave me this.
Anarchy in the 80s, probably.
Yeah, probably. I built a lot of Legos. That has to be said.
I'm an artist that works with building sculptures out of expensive computer equipment. If I were to buy a computer part for hypothetically 100,000 kroner, do I have to depreciate it? If it's part of the artwork and only exists as artwork?
No, well, it's a very special type of artwork, but normally that would be considered to be a purchase of materials under this 211, because you're not using the actual computers, and you're not using it as computers in this sort of form. Yeah.
Okay.
My thoughts go to the Damien Hirst skull with all the diamonds on it. It'd still be a cost of materials on his salary statement or næringsoppgave.
Which is pretty big anyway.
He got more money for it than he used for. So yeah, it's still a taxable income.
Yes, as I said, no more questions. There's a few more here. What does it mean, personfradrag? How would you translate it in English?
Yeah, so it's basically it's a personal deduction that if you're a person in Norway and you're paying taxes in Norway and you are alive, then because dead people have a different there is a different personfradrag for them. It's a different class, but it's a deduction that is given to everyone, and basically it just says you start paying taxes after this and this amount. So that's basically what it says, and you get it no matter how many other deductions you have, and everyone gets it. So it's one of those sort of standard deductions. Yeah.
Again, sorry about cars again. You said that I can put the direct cost of if I hire a van.
Yeah.
If I hire a van through Bildelering, I can only write the kilometers.
No, but Bildeleringen is not something that I can't rent. If I'm not the member of Bildeleringen, I cannot sort of rent. I just want to have Bildeleringen this weekend. So that's sort of more like I think it's more of a standard fee or a monthly fee or an annual fee, and then I pay. Of course, I pay for the actual usage of the car for that weekend, and that's a full. Then you can't put your membership for the Bildeleringen on a sort of permanent basis. That would be a private cost. And I don't remember what the rates are for the Bildeleringen, but I'm assuming it is higher. You get a higher deduction by using the 350 than you are paying at Bildeleringen. Although I don't know the rates there for 2020 and 2021.
Okay. And then the last question. Regarding buying property and asking for a loan to the bank, where do I register the values of loan and interest? Does buying property reduce your tax percentage?
Buying property doesn't. It reduces my net worth. So if I have 10 million in the bank, like I said previously, then my net tax worth is 10 million, and I would be paying a wealth tax on that. But if I take the same 10 million and I buy an apartment, the tax rate of that apartment is probably a lot lower than the market value of the apartment. Probably be around 2 million or something like that, and then I would pay wealth tax based on that. But if I have, let me show you the skattemelding here. If I have a property and I have loans and I have depreciation, not the interest, etc., that will be automatically stated here. So what I get is I get a formue, which is the actual bolig and the fast eiendom. That will show you me not the market value, but the tax value of that property. And I would have further down here, I would have interest and debt and liabilities towards the bank, etc. That would show here, and these two would normally balance out. And my loan is higher than my property value, so I get no wealth tax. But the interest rate that I'm paying, so if I'm paying 100,000 kroner in interest rate, that will be deducted towards my income on the 22% alminnelig inntekt. So if I'm making 60,000 here and I'm paying 100,000 kroner in interest, my net income that year is minus 40. So that will give me a taxable deduction for next year, etc. But if I'm paying 100 kroner interest, 22 of them will be a tax deduction.
Lovely, thank you so much. I don't know what. Also, if people want, I guess there are other accountants. We can send you some contact info, so I can put my email address here, as like at this in the chat if you want other recommendations.
And we can also ask, like, if there's questions, you can't think of them now, and then you're sitting there with your taxes, and we can sum it up and possibly give some answers via email directly if that's a possibility. Because I know that I know a lot of accountants, and all the good ones that don't have quite that much of capacity when you go into when you sort of coming closer to the deadline. So it's quite hard to get a hold of very competent people at the moment. But then again, you have to realize that Skatte-etaten has to give you advice on this as well. So if you have very specific questions, you can call them and get free information from them. And Fiken also has as a service, if you're using a customer of Fiken, they can advise you on these things. and there are several others. So
yeah,
we'll try to help as much as we can.
I don't know if he's there. Mutas, are you there?
I'm there.
Excellent. Would you like to say something before?
Go to sleep.
I would like to thank Christopher for so much information and for and how much we have learned just by today's course. Thank you very much, Christopher, for this useful course. And
Thank you.
It seems like it doesn't help to be only an artist in Norway. We have to be artist and accountant at the same time.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. And if it's any consolation, I can't be an artist. So that's...
yeah, you can actually talk us through the artworks behind you. Just
I could do that. That could be a separate course.
Who's the artist behind you? Is it Ragnhild Oma?
Yeah, this is Ragnhild Oma's work. The
So
scary Bunad ladies.
Yeah. And on your right-hand side?
Yeah, this is work from an Oslo artist, which I can't remember the name of just exactly now. I think it's Wilhelmsen. Is it Wilhelmsen?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's one of the series. Reminded me of where I grew up, where my dad used to take off the hay from the fields with this big it's a slot.
Okay.
Yeah. Can't remember the English word for it. They don't do that in abroad. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'll just say we're doing pretty much the same type of course on May 25th in Norwegian.
Yeah.
And this the recording of this will be on YouTube, so you can always go back. So as they say, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And there's other videos about taxes there as well. So there's a lot of.
I think there's another video of me there as well, where I go talk a little bit more about choosing a company structure and stuff like that.
That's true. Yeah, that's also on the.
Fantastic. You can watch videos all night if you like.
Just about Christopher. Okay, lovely. I'll just say thank you
Wonderful.
so much, everyone, and thank you for all your gorgeous comments and chats, and have a nice evening, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.